Alright, so we got another ready to fly kit here from Makerfire that's sold under the Crazy Pony brand. It's called the Armor Blue Bee, and ready to fly means it does come with everything. It comes with your whip here. It's a little tiny whip drone. You got a controller, and in this case, instead of a pair of goggles, it comes with this little 3-inch FPV monitor that just hooks into this little clip here on top, and this very tiny controller. You can see it almost fits into the palm of my hand here. This is I would say roughly a 3/4 size controller compared to like a tiny, say like a Jumper T12 or TX12 from Radiomaster. For those of you that have really big hands, this is going to be pretty hard to use, but I think they're targeting kids here. Probably adults with smaller hands. We find I have a pretty average sized hand here, maybe slightly below average sized, and yeah, it feels very tiny in my hands here, so not super easy to control, but it's doable. So the rest of the stuff that comes in the kit here, you got one battery here that's in the drone itself. You get a second battery here, so you get two. You get a USB charger, plug this into a battery or a power brick or some kind, and then plug the battery in here. The light will turn red, it means it's charging, and then when it goes off, it means the charging is finished. And then you get a spare set of props, and then you get a couple of these cables here. So one has a 3.5mm connector and bare wires on the other end, and then this one has two, or one cable with two barrel connectors. These are the 3.5mm audio jacks that go to the monitor here, and let me just briefly show you the monitor. So the antenna attaches on top, screws in, nothing on top here. On this side you have your micro USB port for charging the battery, internal battery. There's your 3.5mm audio jack for video out, and then you have three buttons on the side here. Long press to power it on and power it off. Short presses on the top button here for the band. So short presses will change the band, and then short presses on the bottom button will change the frequency, and then this bottom button here, you short press this, and that will search all the whole band for whatever is broadcasting. These are not connected from the factory, at least mine was not. So you turn this on. This is, I think it defaulted to band A, channel 1. You can change your bands and channels via the button here on top, like so. But I just short pressed the search button and it found the channel, no problem. The camera angle is adjustable, as you can see here. You can go 90 degrees if you want, or I would recommend, if you're a beginner, pretty much flat like this is fine. You're going to probably see the prop guards in your video feed, but that's going to mean it's going to fly slower and you have a better experience that way. There's the plug for the battery. This is like some sort of pH 2.0 connector, but it's not quite that. It's a little bit bigger. It's an old school connector that were on some of these old whips. It's the same frame. These little 7/16 brushed motors. Yeah, this is like pretty old school. This has something called altitude hold. So for beginners, that's one of the hardest things, is to control your throttle. And so once you take off, it will maintain that altitude. It's fairly high. It's about 6 feet off the ground. So you may want to just drop that down. Basically, you have a centering throttle here. See, it'll center in the middle. That means it is only for altitude control or altitude hold. And so to bring it down in height, you lower this throttle stick like so. To increase your height, you increase it like so. This is the yaw axis. If you push right or to the left, it will rotate the drone right or left in the yaw axis. This is the pitch axis, pitch forward or back. That's basically to move the drone forward or backwards. So let's see here. This is, the right is forward. If you pitch forward, it'll pitch this down, and then that'll cause the drone to move forward. And then to go backwards, it'll pitch it the other way, and that'll cause it to go backwards. And also in the same way, right and left. Push right, it goes that way. push left to go this way, and all these controls are in the orientation where the camera is pointing away from you. If you have the camera pointing at you, then this right stick, the controls are going to be reversed. So if you want to go away, you're going to push down, and that'll go away. If you want to go forward, push up, and then this is left, will go this way, and then right will go that way. So when the drone orientation is reversed, where it's pointing towards you, then this right stick is reversed. So generally speaking, with the camera pointing away from you, is the direction the camera is going to see. So if you're flying through the screen here, then of course the right stick controls won't be reversed. So these cables here for this audio jack is for video out, and so I use this one here, and it does have a explanation of the pinout on the plug here, and this is, I think, pretty much a Fat Shark standard here. And if you want to use it with a different DVR, then you can wire up your own cable using the wires that are indicated here with the bare wires. But I just use this pretty old FXT DVR. It's got a built-in battery, records at 60 frames per second. This is like 4 or 5 years old, and I just plugged it into AVN. I'll link this in the video description if you want to get this, and then you just turn this on, and then once you have video, you can record to this one onto the micro SD card, and that's how I'm getting the footage that you're seeing from the flight that I did. It's off of this actual receiver that's built into the monitor. I didn't use an external receiver. So that's, if you're wondering how to get record your flights, you can do that, because there's no DVR built into this, but you can use an external DVR like this using the included cable. And yeah, I believe, for this setup here, it's about $80 for the whole Ready to Fly kit. I believe that's going to be probably the cheapest Ready to Fly kit that at least I'm aware of. If you know of another kit that has a controller, a drone, batteries, and a screen or goggles for under $80, do let me know about that so I can let other people know about that, because most of the ones that are coming out now are, especially even though it's analog, it's still going to be around the $200 price range typically. So this is definitely, if you're looking to get an FPV and not looking to spend a ton of money, $80 is, I think, a pretty good value in terms of what you get for the money. All right, so a few last things to mention. There's a manual. There's a manual for the monitor as well, and it shows you, it's got a frequency chart here and pretty standard stuff. Nothing particularly amazing about the equipment here. Budget entry-level equipment. So here are the specs, and it is flyable. One of the things you'll probably notice is as a reviewer, I try and fly through the equipment that's given. A lot of reviewers will not be able to fly through this monitor because they are too accustomed to flying through goggles, and so they'll fly this through the goggles, and their flight will look amazing because it's easier to fly through goggles than through a monitor. But if you're obviously on a budget, you're gonna obviously fly through this because your goggles can be quite expensive. And just keep in mind that when they are flying through their goggles, usually those are like Fat Sharks or Sky Zones or something like that. Those are going to run, I think nowadays the prices went up. I think they're like $500 or $600 just for the goggles, which is like more than 6-7 times the whole kit here. So I am flying it through the monitor that is provided. It is definitely flyable, and it's one of the reasons why I continue to fly through monitors and these kind of kits, because I wanted to be able to show how it actually flies when you're using the equipment that's given versus some $600 pair of goggles, which obviously may show that it flies better than it potentially could. But of course, as a beginner, you're going to learn through the monitor and it'll be fine. It's totally flyable through the monitor, and you'll see that in the demo here. Last thing to mention is it does take 2 AA batteries as not included, so you have to add those in the back here. And this is the actual manual for the whole kit, and I'm just going to cover the highlights here. So there's a lot of buttons here on the controller. The one that is I think the ones that are most important are the emergency stop, this button here, and then the 1 key takeoff and landing. And let me just show you that here on the transmitter. So basically, you're going to turn on the controller, and then you're going to press up and down on the throttle stick to bind to the drone. Of course, mine's not plugged in, so you're going to plug that in first. It'll be flashing. Turn this on, up and down on the throttle. You hear the beeps, and then once the red light's solid, you are bound. And then you're going to hit the 1 key takeoff button. But before you do that, you probably want to put the drone on a level surface, so that, and calibrate it first, and that is this stick combination here. So after you've turned everything on, bound it, first thing you want to do is calibrate like this. You'll hear a beep, and then it'll be calibrated. I mean, they'll know what the level is, otherwise it might be kind of off and they'll fly off somewhere. So do that, and then take off with the 1 key takeoff button. So press that, it'll take off. The motor will start, it'll take off. And then if you, for a reason, you know, you've crashed and the motor is still spinning, you hit this emergency stop button and it'll kill the motor. So it's not like, in case it's like caught in someone's hair or something like that, for example, you obviously want the motors to stop, hit the emergency stop button. And again, as I mentioned, in terms of flying and the motions, I talked about that earlier. Anyway, overall for the money, I think this is a pretty good kit, you know, to get you started. Just get you up in the air, get you flying. It's fairly forgiving. It doesn't go too fast, and you can kind of scoot it around because it does have that altitude hold capability. That which is actually the hardest thing to learn when flying. It's actually maintaining that altitude for you. Now, one of the things is when you do a lot of quick yaws, it does tend to drop a little bit faster in height, but it does recover back quickly. So just, you know, you can adjust your height, of course, just by pushing up and down on the throttle stick to adjust your height as you're flying around. And yeah, it's basically point and shoot, really. Just, you know, forward, back, left, right, make those little yaw turns. It doesn't go that fast, so you can definitely, I mean, you know, I'm a pretty experienced flyer, and I can just sense that this is not that hard to control because it doesn't go that fast, and because it maintains that altitude for you. It's fairly easy to control, and as long as you're in a fairly open space, not a lot of objects around, just make sure that there's not nothing, you know, no like things and objects and things they might crash into. If you want to sort of stay away from those kind of areas, then this should be fairly easy to fly and learn on. And then, of course, later on, after you've sort of mastered this craft and are looking to get something a little bit better, I do have a playlist of ready to fly kits down in the video description. You probably want to move on to something maybe with brushless motors and something that does not have altitude hold. That's going to be probably the next challenge once you sort of master this. And those kits are going to be a little bit more, but you know, just to give you a taste of what flying FPV is like, for $80, this is a fairly good deal, and I would recommend it if you're, you know, curious about it but don't want to spend a lot of money. And of course, you know, if you end up getting it and you're like, well, this is not really for me, you can probably give it away or even sell it to somebody online through like Craigslist or something like that for, you know, maybe like $50 or $40 and recover most of your money. And or once you're done with this, sell it and then buy something a little bit more advanced. And again, check out my playlist down in the video description with all the rated fly kits that I have reviewed in the past. Those, of course, are more advanced, more features, just better performance overall, but of course it's going to cost you a little bit more. But of course, you know, for those of you that don't want to spend the money, try this one out first, and then once you're happy with this one and want to move on, check out that playlist. And if you have any questions on what I would recommend for the next one after this one, leave me a comment or question down below, and I'll try and answer that based on what your experience level is and what how you've experienced this particular product. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Got any questions, let me know. Talk to you guys in the next one.